Okay, brilliant. So thanks, Michelle. So my name's Ross Atkinson. I'm the programme manager for two and a half themes for the ARC for Greater Manchester, so the Applied Research Collaboration for Greater Manchester. I'm the programme manager for the evaluation theme, which is a cross-cutting theme, and organising care. And I'm also supporting Michelle in capacity building with the pre-doctoral fellowships, which is what I hope everybody's here for today, and also the internships, which is another opportunity that we can discuss if people want to later on in the session. If people think that pre-doctoral fellowships might not be for them, we can also discuss internships a little bit. We've also got other people on the call, so I'd just like to go around and let people introduce themselves to start with. Michelle, do you want to start?
Yes, I'm very happy to. So my name's Michelle Briggs. I'm a clinical professor of nursing. That's a joint appointment between the University of Manchester and Manchester NHS Foundation Trust, and I lead the capacity building theme within NIHR's ARC GM.
Thanks, Michelle. Karen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everybody. I'm the project support coordinator in capacity building. So some of you may already have had some communication with me. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Karen. And Penny.
Hi everyone, so I'm Penny Lewis. I'm Senior Clinical Lecturer at the University of Manchester in the School of Pharmacy, and I'm also Academic Lead for Research at Manchester Foundation Trust. I'm currently seconded to the Capacity Building Leadership Team, so thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Penny. And somebody who's not on the call is Beck Elvey, who's one of the research fellows in the theme. But just to note that all of us are available. If anybody's got any queries, then you can either direct them initially towards me and Karen, or if you want to approach people directly, that's absolutely fine. And just a reminder that we're recording this session just so that we can make it available to people who weren't able to attend today. We'll make the link available on the website, the ARC website, which is actually just undergoing a bit of a revamp, but we'll also send the link out to people directly. We're also going to have another question and answer session a couple of weeks before the closing date, so we'll again advertise that in due course so that people are able to contact us if they through that session if they've got any last minute questions and queries. So I just wanted to start off by just noting some of the key timelines for applicants for the pre-doc fellows. So the actual application closing date is on the 23rd of May at 5 p.m. We've got that, it's around 2 months from now, so we're hoping that that gives people sufficient time to work up their applications. But in that time, if people do, as I mentioned, have queries, do contact us, especially if you've got questions around supervision and things like that. So we'll be able to help you in that respect. Shortlisted applicants will be informed of whether they've been invited to interview the week beginning the 13th of June. So we've got a process to go through in terms of sifting for eligibility and shortlisting, and we're hoping to let people know as soon as we can in that week. And interviews have actually now been fixed for the 30th of June. And just to mention that you can find more information about the fellowships on the ArcGM website. So you'll have to bear with us in terms of the website. We are getting more content on there, but we will make people aware of all the relevant updates either by email or through the partner trusts and the research champions. So I just wanted to start off by really exploring eligibility for the pre-doc fellowships a little bit. So the pre-doctoral fellowship scheme is really to try and encourage people from a diverse range of backgrounds in health and care within Greater Manchester to pursue further study with the idea of working towards submitting a competitive PhD application. So this year we've actually broadened out the remit to include people not just only from nursing, midwifery and social care, but allied health professionals which have been eligible in the past, but also to people in commissioning and policy makers across Greater Manchester. And this year what we've asked for people applying is to demonstrate that they're employed by a health or care organisation in Greater Manchester, so that could be one of our partner trusts or a local authority in Greater Manchester. What we also ask people to ensure they outline in our application is that you've got some named supervisors on your application. And again, as I mentioned before, this can be something that we can work with you with to try and make sure that you've got the best people in place on your application. You may know some people who could be your clinical supervisor, and I think Michelle will talk a little bit more about supervision later in this call. But we ideally ask you to have maybe a couple of supervisors on your application to support you. One of them must come from the ARC for Greater Manchester, and this could be a primary supervisor or it could be a secondary supervisor. It's just whatever works best for your application, really. I'm actually going to hand over to Michelle at this point just to describe what makes a good primary academic supervisor, really because Michelle's got experience of supervising PhDs and has done a lot of work in this area. So Michelle, would you like to pick up on this?
Yes, so certainly you may think from a pre-doctoral point of view, you wouldn't necessarily have your PhD supervisor already in place. But we've learned our experiences that actually being able to develop your relationships with supervisors early on in your journey is really important. So if you've done an internship, you may have people who've helped you with supervision there. If you've got if you've done master's courses or if you have connections, then you think about how those people who have helped you academically, because we know that a key success factor in getting a PhD fellowship, grant fellowship, which is what these pre-doctoral fellowships are about, is they're designed to have dedicated time and input from academic supervisors to help you make the best possible PhD application. So what makes a good primary academic supervisor is somebody who already has experience as a PhD supervisor, so can understand how you make how you pull together a good PhD. Also, that they've got experience either in your research topic or that there's a relevant methodology that they, so for example, if you think that your research question is likely to need to be answered in a qualitative way, that you've got somebody who's got expertise in the particular method that you want to do, or that, so for example, I'm a pain researcher, so if somebody was interested in doing pain research, you've got to make a case that your supervisors are able to support you in both your personal development, but also the development of your PhD project. Also think about how, I mean, this has got much easier since the advent of MS Teams and Zoom, but just how you're going to be able to maintain contact with them, and do they have time? How many PhD students are they already supervising? Do they have time to devote to you and your pre-doctoral fellowship? And are they suitable to be your supervisor for the PhD of your university of choice? So if you're thinking about a particular area and you know that nationally there's a university, there's a research group that are excellent for your area of research, you may want to contact them and say, I'd like to be, I'd like to learn from you and be part of your research group. So they may be thinking that that's something that they would like to commit to ultimately being your PhD supervisor. So it's not necessary that your pre-doctoral supervisors will go on to be your PhD supervisors, but if they have got capacity and they're able to, then that really does help build that academic relationship. Is that okay, Ross? Is that sort of thing?
That's brilliant. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah. So again, just coming back to the idea of supervision, and I just encourage people at this point, if you've got any questions and you want to note them in the chat, you can do that, or we will be asking people if they want to read the question out towards the end. We just want to make sure we've provided you with some basic information first before, just to stimulate that discussion. So you might be asking how you go about finding your supervisors, and Michelle's already described some of the attributes of a good supervisor there. What we'd encourage you to do really is to try and look early. We know you've only got a couple of months to develop your application, but there may be people that you're already working with, and you probably have links with some postgraduate tutors in your university. So it might be the University of Manchester, Salford, or Manchester Met, or Bolton University. If you don't know who those people are, again, try and find out, or if you have got queries, come back to us and we'll try and help you find out who the people are that you need to be getting in touch with. Or if you want to put your email address in the chat, we can send you a list of supervisors and their experience. So people, we're in the good position at the moment with the ARC that we've had 2 or 3 years worth of cohorts of people coming through the pre-doc fellowship program. So we've built up a list of people who are really good at supervising, and actually some of them get really good feedback from their fellows. And we like to encourage people to sort of maintain that involvement with the scheme. So we do have a list of people who we can put you in touch with. Again, I'm just going to hand back to Michelle just to describe what we've called the 4 Ps on this this slide, which are the person, place, proposal, and potential. So Michelle, over to you.
Yes, so what makes a good application, and the sorts of things I like to refer to the 4 Ps for success, and very often sometimes people think about one at the detriment of the other. So what I would suggest to you is that you think of all 4 of these things in balance. So the person, and what we mean by that is you as the applicant. What's your potential? The pre-doctoral fellowships are designed to help you on your path to becoming a clinical academic. So if you don't want to be a clinical academic, or you think that that's not something that's ahead in your career, then maybe pre-doctoral fellowships. Or if you don't want to do a PhD, I think the key sense of the title of pre-doctoral is that it is about people who want to ultimately do a PhD. So in terms of the person, we're looking to you and your potential and your ambitions and your passions about doing a PhD and becoming a clinical academic. So that's the first bit. The second bit is the place in which you will do your PhD. Is it the best place for you to be? Does that particular university have a dedicated research team in the area that you're working in? Does it have is the NHS organisation that you're wanting to do your pre-doc and PhD work in, is it a particular area of priority for them? Are they supporting you? Is your line manager supporting you? Is the place that you're in going to be the right place for you for you to be successful in your PhD? And then your proposal, of course, we're wanting to support your good scientific ideas and things that the 4th P, which is the potential to bring in funding. Ultimately, we're wanting to support you to develop a PhD funding application that is successful. So it won't be successful unless you've got a very solid scientific and rigorous research proposal. So that's the P. Now, in the pre-doctoral application, it's a little bit, it's a challenge to, you almost have to think about your PhD idea and have an idea about what area your PhD is, but we're not asking you to fully work up the full PhD proposal, because that's what will happen within your pre-doc. But in order to say what the bits of the bits that you need in terms of your pre-doc support, you need to have an idea of what your PhD will be about. So it is a little bit chicken and egg, but you can't develop a good pre-doctoral plan unless you've got a strong idea about what your PhD question will be, and that you've got some ideas about how that question would best be answered. I hope that's clear.
Brilliant, thanks, Michelle. So, and just to reiterate on that point, plans do change. So we, as Michelle says, we don't expect people to have a fully worked up PhD proposal in front of them. In fact, if that were the case, then we'd hope that you'd be able to apply to a PhD directly. But the pre-docs are really to sort of bridge that gap between you having some sort of experience and the want to go into research and not quite there with your PhD proposal. So it's really to try and give you some time and some experience to develop that and develop all of these things, to develop yourself, to build those relationships with the organisations that you're working with, and to develop that proposal, which hopefully then will mean that you've got the potential to go on for the PhD application. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing just so that we can take some questions from people. If I can work out how to stop the screen sharing. Penny, I just wondered if you wanted, we should say the fifth P actually. Penny, do you want to comment on any of the things that we've already said, because you've got a lot of experience from previous rounds of recruitment for the pre-doc fellowships?
I was just going to, I mean, we've had a couple of questions already. I was going to say the question as a pharmacist, there was a question by Lydia whether pharmacists are eligible, and I'd say definitely we are. And we have had lots of success with pharmacists going through this programme and going forward. There was a question about what proportion of pre-doctoral fellows go on to successfully secure a PhD, which Lydia followed up with. I don't know whether, Michelle, you can answer that.
So we don't have, we've been running the programme so we've had 4 pre-doc fellows in year 1, and some of those, the way that the programme is structured is it's sometimes over 1 year and 2 years, so some of those are still doing their pre-doctoral fellowship, some of them have finished, in terms of going on to get extra funding, the success rate is high, but it's not necessarily always a PhD, because what the pre-doctoral fellowship will do is start to build your ideas. So some people will do the pre-doctoral fellowship with us and then feel like they need extra pre-doctoral support before they're ready for the PhD. And so they've secured the NIHR pre-doctoral, the PCAF awards. Others have secured PhD funding, but I'd say it's probably a bit too early in our programme because we're only in year 2 and we've got 8 current pre-docs on our programme and had 4 pre-docs last year. So I think in terms of success rate, I would be saying that come back in 2 years' time and see where our success rate is. But ultimately, it's generally pre-doc fellowships do increase your success nationally of getting a PhD funding. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. Obviously, it's quite a big undertaking for anyone to do, so it's just purely out of interest, really. But yeah, that absolutely answers the question. Thank you.
I mean, I think that as it is considered that the PhD funding envelope is incredibly competitive. So whatever you can do in terms of pre-doctoral is not wasted. And certainly that's our evaluations of people have really appreciated having that dedicated time to develop their application, because once you developed your application, you may not be successful the first time round, but you've got a fully worked up application, so you can, it's less energy and effort then to submit that for another consideration.
As you get feedback at that stage, don't you, Michelle? Yeah. If you weren't successful, so you could work on that element, so you know where the improvements might need to be made, and that makes your PhD journey a lot easier. Yeah. It's really worked up, it's ready to go.
And also, I'd probably just recognise that sometimes the trajectory is not linear. People do take breaks and people don't want to apply for a PhD straight away, or things happen in people's lives that mean that they put something on the back burner but do go back to it. And like Penny said, if you get feedback, it's a little bit like some academics will submit to a really high impact journal just to get the feedback. Even if it doesn't get accepted, and they will use that feedback to refine their paper and submit to another journal. So it might be that you get feedback on your pre-doctoral fellowship, you might be unsuccessful, but actually it might be really good feedback that means you can refine your PhD proposal. You might think, well, I'm going to submit it straight for a PhD. So the feedback, we think, and it maybe links to the point that somebody's made in the chat about who does the shortlisting of the applications. The feedback's probably really useful for people who are successful, but also for people who don't get through.
Okay.
So we have some more questions if you'd like me to field them.
Right, I'm scrolling.
So how many awards are there?
So this time, there's 5 available within ARC, and I'm just noticing a follow-up question is the competition ratio. Now that's that until we know how many people are applied, we can't tell you what the competition ratio is, because we don't know the number of people, and the number of people who apply each year ranges quite markedly. So it's not really possible to say what a competition ratio is for this competition, but there are 5 awards available within the ARC. Am I correct, Ross?
Yeah, I think there are 5 guaranteed, and I think we're probably in that position whereby if we have lots and lots of really, really good applications, we review them on a case-by-case basis, and we do try and accommodate more places where we might be able to.
Absolutely.
So with the way that funding works means that we can be a little bit flexible. In terms of the competition ratio, I think there's quite a high proportion of people get through the shortlisting and get to interview, which we think is a good thing, because it means that we can provide people with really, really good feedback. And as Michelle mentioned, last year there were 8 pre-doc fellowships awarded.
So Ross is absolutely right. Where we can support people, we really want to support people, and we're very keen to support people from a very wide range of, so we're absolutely proactively encouraging people from all backgrounds, and we want to be as inclusive as possible and support as many people as possible to pursue their ambition of doing a PhD. And Ross or Penny, do you want to, bearing in mind you're both involved in the shortlisting, do you want to describe the shortlisting process and who shortlists the applications?
Yeah, sure. Penny, do you want to take that question? Because I know that you've led the shortlisting process in the past.
Yeah, so in the past, obviously, they're all screened to make sure you fit the eligibility criteria, and you've got everything in place that we ask for. And then it will go out to a panel of most likely the supervisors, that the list that you will receive, it will be the people that will be supervising that will be shortlisted, so they know what it is they're looking for, and the kind of attributes that are needed. And we focus on how your work fits with, aligns with what you're doing, and it's gonna the impact that it might have on patients in the future. How it aligns with what the ARC are interested in, but really importantly, your trajectory, for wanting to then go on to do a PhD and study, and the interest that you show in wanting to have a clinical academic career. And obviously there needs to be a project, as Michelle's talked about, and some insight into that. It doesn't have to be fully formed, because that's the whole purpose of this time, is to give you the headspace to work it up, but there needs to be a fundamental problem or issue that you want to tackle, and you need to be able to sort of articulate that problem clearly, so that there's some trajectory there. And in terms of how you're going to tackle that problem or answer that research question, that can be worked up as part of the pre-doc. So we want to sort of some insight into that. So we're looking at the problem that you're setting the scene for, and also what kind of training that you want to have. So you might think that you don't know enough about patients' thoughts on this topic, and so you could use some of that funding to get patient engagement, work on forming a patient and public experience group, and looking at that. It's hard to say exactly what it is that you want to do, because we're all very different. We all have different backgrounds in terms of our any research experience that you've had, but you might think, well, I want to know a bit about qualitative methods, and how that would fit with what I'm doing. And so we do offer sort of money for training. And is it a particular, Michelle, is there a particular course that I remember we used to kind of highlight that people could join?
I think we offer suggestions, but we open it out, so there's a personal budget each pre-doc has, and we offer suggestions of training that people can do, but we're trying to be as inclusive as possible in terms of being able to, for pre-docs to have a conversation with their supervisors and look at what their training needs are. And the thing that I would say is to be really careful that you don't spend all of your time doing training and don't allocate time to writing your PhD application, because the key outcome of the pre-doctoral fellowship is to, at the end of the time that you have, whether it's 25% over 2 years or 50% over 1 year, at the end of that time, the key output is for you to have a strong application, but that does include patient and public involvement, consultation. It does include building your skills up if you've not done a master's and you think that you need some more training and masters. So it's, as I say, it's difficult for us to be prescriptive, because we want these to be bespoke and support the individual. So it's the best applications are the ones where you've clearly had those conversations with an academic team and your line managers within your organization to say how best are you going to be supported to deliver a pre-doctoral fellowship.
So I think, I mean, the criteria as to what we're looking for in that shortlisting process when it's being reviewed is stated in the guidance document. So you can see, you can kind of use it as a bit of a checklist to make sure that those kind of messages come through on your application. And we will, those kind of elements are scored and discussed, and then those that kind of meet the criteria at a certain level, a certain quality level, will then be put forward to interview. But I think we mentioned we would offer that feedback if requested, so that you could perhaps, if you weren't successful this time, apply again. It's not always it's not the most straightforward process. You have to get yourself into that mindset and obviously get people to read it now, but we'll happily kind of give you that feedback if you weren't successful.
So there's another question from, sorry, shall I ask the next one?
Yes.
Yep. So there's a question from Louise Shaw. I'm a social worker working in the NHS mental health. Would this meet eligibility for potential funding?
Yeah, I've given a little thumbs up to that already. That's definitely, yeah, you're definitely eligible for funding for the pre-doc fellowships, Louise. So as Michelle mentioned, we're wanting people from a wide range of backgrounds, and not just nursing, midwifery and allied health professionals. We've opened this round of applications up to people even from commissioning and policymakers, so that we can get a very broad sort of scope across Greater Manchester. The key things are that you work in Greater Manchester, in health, social care, and that sort of area. We're not accepting people who are coming from private healthcare providers, as you might expect. We're focusing on sort of publicly funded organisations, but essentially anybody in those backgrounds except medics and dentists. So this is a funding scheme that's very broad, with the exception of those two professions. And there is no maximum number of times that you can apply. So obviously the Act for Greater Manchester runs until late 2024. So we've got another couple of rounds of people to recruit. If you're not successful this time, yes, by all means, keep that link with us, receive the updates, think about other options, but we definitely encourage people to apply again. And if there are ways that we can, go about the recruitment process that you think we need to change, then we do appreciate your feedback in terms of, as well as your questions that we're asking you to come with today. We do appreciate your feedback on trying to make the process better. So we do like to maintain links with people. And just going back to the point about the number of people who go on to PhD applications and things like that, we do track sort of the numbers, and we're trying to keep a record of where people are going and what might be happening in their career, so that we can provide that information at some point. So it's good to keep that network. So I wonder if anybody else has got any more questions at this point? If anybody wants to say the question on the microphone, you're more than welcome to speak up. We do want to make sure that we make the best. And just really appreciate everybody coming to the session, actually, because it's great to see that we've managed to advertise the session to a few people this time round. I mentioned before that we're having another question and answer session, just in case there are any sort of questions that we've not picked up this time or that we can't deal with in the interim, and that is planned for sometime in May. I'm just trying to find the date of that one. That will be, it's preliminary, the 11th of May at 9:30 in the morning. So we know as well that people that work in clinical and practitioner sort of roles have a lot of demands on their time, and we do appreciate that we sometimes need to be a little bit flexible with how we interact. So this session online, obviously we were forced into this sort of way of working a couple of years ago with the pandemic, but just to mention that a lot of the training and communication that you might receive may be online, it may be in person, it might be a mixture of the two, and we do, you know, appreciate you trying to have that good communication with us from the outset in terms of what might suit you best. So there's a question there about the training budget, and what the maximum training budget would be. So there's a training budget of £2,000 for each of the ARC funded fellowships, and again that can be used on research training. It could be used on maybe management training if you wanted to pursue something like that was related to research or leadership. So there are other things that you can use that budget on, and it's good to specify the kind of things that you might want to spend that training on to start with, just so that we've got an idea and we can then signpost you to things that you might want to do. And again, a lot of this stuff comes down to having that conversation and putting as much information in your application as you can, and then we can work with you to try and make those things happen. It's really trying to understand what the aims of your pre-doc fellowship will be. So again, going back to the 4 Ps, developing you as a person, getting the training that you need in place, developing your proposal, making those links with the people and the organisations that you need to work with. Mm-hmm. And yes, Susie will be posting the recording. We'll send you a link to the recording, but I think we're also going to make it available on the ARC website.
And in answer to Lydia's question, I do apologise. I've got about 8% left on my laptop, and my charger's not working. So if I come out, it's not because of anything that anybody's said. But Lydia, no, there's no limit to how many times. Obviously, you can only apply once in each round, but there's no limit to how many rounds you can apply for. So if you apply this time and you're not successful, you can apply again, and we would welcome applications that meet the feedback, and we have a record of the feedback that we've given unsuccessful applicants. So we'll be looking to see that if you do apply again, that you've addressed that feedback. I hope that's answered your question, Lydia.
It has, yeah, and same for the PhD. I know sometimes they sort of cap the number of times that you can apply to a specific project.
Yes, so NIHR do cap the number of times that you can go back and apply, which is one of the reasons why pre-doctoral fellowships are so important, because it's being able to make the most of the opportunities of those PhD applications. So I think it's 2 opportunities for each doctoral award within NIHR. Other MRC and Wellcome, I'm not aware that they cap, or other ESRC or other PhD funders. I'm not aware that they cap, but certainly I know that NIHR do cap their PhDs.
Thank you. I'm not sounding very confident here, am I?
No, not at all. You're asking really good questions. I mean, this is absolutely the opportunity, and you're asking the questions that probably people are thinking. So it's really good.
Michelle, did you want to? I mentioned the internships a little bit earlier on, and sort of that sort of stepping stone If people are thinking, oh, the pre-doc fellowship's really not for me, I don't feel ready for it. I mean, that might change over the next couple of months. But do you want to mention?
Absolutely. So if you start if you start at this point and think, oh my goodness, this is the first time I've thought of a pre-doctoral fellowship, and you start the process and you think maybe my thought patterns or maybe I've not worked it up, or
oh, that's the battery gone.
We'll let Michelle. I think a couple of the interns actually might be on the call. I didn't know if anybody wanted to say anything about the internships anyway, but shall we pick up the questions that are remaining in the chat just there? I think Joanne's got one there. Our ARC fellowship scheme occurs once a year, Joanne, but the way we've structured it means that pre-doc fellowships are once a year. They can be over the course of 1 or 2 years, depending on the level of backfill, which relates to the next question. Is yes, we do provide funding for fellowships in terms of backfill up to £20,000. So that can be split across a single year for 50% backfill, or it could be 25% over 2 years.
Kirsty's
apologies for that. I dipped out on I don't know why my laptop won't charge, but I've come back in.
So Kirsty's on the call. She highly recommends the internship, which is lovely to hear.
Great.
And it's great to see that you're on the call, Kirsty, because it hopefully means that you're going to apply to one of the pre-doc fellowships.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, fingers crossed. Yeah, I am definitely going to apply. So yeah, fingers crossed. I applied last year, but unfortunately was unsuccessful and took the ARC internship up this year instead, which has been a massive kind of game changer in terms of understanding the process, understanding research in general, and working with the team, the ARC team really has been really useful. So anyone who's not too sure about pre-doc, I'd highly recommend the ARC internship. It's been really useful.
Fab. That's really good to hear, and the internships will be advertised in due course. Over the summer, I think we're looking to do the recruitment process for that, and again, they sort of happen once a year.
And the timing of the internships is we tend to launch the internship competition around about May, precisely, Kirsty, for the sorts of things that you're describing, is that some people may start their journey thinking about a pre-doc, but actually are not quite there for lots of different reasons. And so to be able to, if you do apply for a pre-doc and you're not successful, it's not the, all is not lost. So thank you for sharing your experience, because it is about us being able to direct people to say, well, you've missed out this year on a pre-doc, but actually here's another opportunity that'll help you on your way.
I think Susie's got a hand up.
Yeah, I'm just echoing what Kirsty said, because I'm doing my BRC internship and I'm thoroughly enjoying it, actually. And that's what that's what made me to think about this pre-doc, to be honest. And I think that's a stepping stone, and you are not jumping into something straight away. You have got a little bit of background about the research. So I think that was a fantastic thing I did. And thank you, Jill is my mentor, and as you know, she's fantastic.
Brilliant. Thanks, Susan. That's really good to hear. There's some really good questions coming through, actually. So I apologize, I don't know your name because it just says guest for me, but the question is there any tips to convince managers this is a good idea to let you apply? Now, I think this is really key to people getting a good application in, and it's the support of your line manager and the service manager. And I would say start talking to these people really early. And the more that your proposal aligns with the strategic sort of goals of your organisation, the better. So they've got to have a particularly good reason if somebody is offering the organisation money to backfill your time when you're doing some work that could ultimately benefit the organisation and the patients, that's in line with your strategy documents. So if you can pull off the strategy documents or stuff from the website and clearly articulate that to them and how your proposal aligns with that, that's fantastic.
I would completely agree with that, Ross. I think that's a really good answer, and certainly if I get my laptop up and running, I'll put a paper in the chat which is just from a nursing point of view, but I think it it could be linked to others around the benefits of having doctoral PhDs within your workforce. So there, if you Google and do some searches about the benefits of having research active staff within your workforce, and not just for you personally, but the benefits, so that we know, and there's research that clearly states that if you've got a research active organization, that your clients or your patients do better, they respond to treatments better, that patient information is better. So there's a lot of evidence to say having staff who are research active improves the service generally. And then, so that's about you and being research active. So you're doing them a favour by being research active, because you're improving their service and being able to provide evidence for that. And the second thing is to say, how will your project improve and impact on the service that they're trying to deliver, so that they can make a good case for allocating time to that work? So to move the conversation beyond just providing, not that I'm saying it's not important to support your personal development, but actually to make the case that it's about those 4 Ps again, that it supports your personal development, but that it's good for patients, as Penny was saying, for you to be research active and to have a research active workforce, and then also that within the service development, you can see very clearly where your PhD will contribute. So a line manager is more likely to support a PhD that they can see direct benefit into their service than a PhD. So I'm pulling an example off the top of my head, but if you were working in cardiology and wanted to do your PhD in dermatology, because you're interested in dermatology, then your cardiology manager may not be as amenable, if that makes sense. So it's about aligning the priorities.
And also, just one other thing to highlight, really, that these predoctoral fellowships are funded by the National Institute for Health and Social Care Research, the NIHR. So they're not, although they're local to our Greater Manchester area, this funding comes to support specifically that area in research from a national level. So it's really sort of it's competitive, and it's quite high profile funding.
There's a question from Andy. Can he use the proposal, or can they use the proposal that is used for the ARC internship?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, because obviously my whole area of work is admission avoidance, and obviously the impacts it has on services. I have used it during the internship, but it's still a lot to develop, and I do want to take it towards a PhD, especially with like under the organising care theme. It's just, can it continue with the same application with the same theme, or do we have to change the theme?
Yeah, I think it makes sense that you build on something, because this is where your area of expertise lies, and it's just a stepwise approach towards that final, that PhD. And even after a PhD doesn't end there. There's much more you can carry on with your own research and running your own research and postdoctoral. So yeah, I think it would, in fact, it might be more questionable if you didn't build on what you were already doing, because that would infer that you change track, although you could justify it. But I think that's perfectly reasonable, Andy.
Okay, great, thank you.
There were a couple of things, I don't know whether you want me to talk about a couple of things that I spotted in the applications from last year, sort of areas that might, be worth sort of bearing in mind when you're writing it, in terms of the pitfalls of some of the applications that I saw. And I suppose one of the things you could work on when you're doing the application is just making it really clear what bits you intend to do in your in the pre-doc time versus what you're going to do in your PhD, just because it can be if you put everything you're going to do in your PhD and it's not clear, that sounds like it's very ambitious, because obviously it's a PhD. So if you can make it clear to the reader what you can talk about, what your PhD intends to be about, and what you might do in that, but actually what is it you're going to do in this year, in that 1 year pre-doc to work up to that, and then explaining that in a bit more detail than potentially the PhD. So it just makes it easy for the reader, and when we're trying to understand what you want to do. The other thing was about the training. There were some times that people didn't put anything in for the training and what they wanted to do. So do have a word with your intended supervisors as to what kind of training there is, because I know it's hard for you to kind of navigate that. But your supervisors or your intended supervisors could certainly help you come up with a plan. Because it's a great opportunity to do some training. And there were a couple more things. I think the other one was about how your supervisors map on, and I think Michelle's already talked about it early on, but how do they map on? What do they add to what you're doing? And it doesn't have to be just subject expertise, it can be methodological expertise. You might have one that's really strong in a particular approach, qualitative research, for instance, or something quantitative, but perhaps they don't know the area that you're interested in, and that's fine. Your kind of other supervisor will have that knowledge. So I think they were the three kind of main areas that perhaps to think about when you're writing.
I would echo that as well, Penny. Just in terms of one of the things that we will look at applications for is the writing style, the presentation of the application, and making things clear. So the use of headings, if you want to use headings to ask, pose questions in your application form, especially the research questions that you want to answer, is a really good way of sort of setting out your applications, and bounce it back between, if you've got a friend that you might be working in your particular area, it makes sense to then get advice. The process of writing an application, a little bit like writing a scientific paper, is going to be iterative, and you welcome that feedback from other people. So it's a little bit of a balance between being an independent sort of person and making it your research proposal, but then taking on board the comments of others. I think is really useful over the next couple of months.
Andy, is that your hand up, or was that from previous?
No, that was me again. So when you were just talking about the be clear on the concepts of what you want to do during the pre-doc fellowship versus your PhD, I think this is kind of where my lines get blurred, because I have the overall concept of what I want to do down the line, but I'm not quite sure the steps in the processes. So the ARC internship is doing really well to kind of rein me in, shall I say, of all these expectations of myself in a year. But it's that step-by-step process I'm probably still kind of naive about. I'm not quite sure what happens versus the PhD, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Do you want me to? I can answer that question, so Andy. It's really interesting that you say being reined in. I think that is a really common experience at the beginning. We very often academically we start off with a really we all want to make a difference. We want to make a difference to the people that we're working with in our services, and you start off with big questions which aren't necessarily answerable within one person's PhD. They're whole big program questions, and often you're too ambitious, and we have to pare that down. Equally, the best work, the processes, and that's often what you're doing within an internship, is you're really trying to think. It takes a long time to find a question that is going to make a difference to the people that you work with, and is answerable within your skill base and the supervisors and the team that you have around you. And then in a pre-doc, the steps are think forward to. So for example, if you know that you're going to target a particular funder, so MRC or the National Institute of Health and Care Research, as it's just about to be renamed. So that's an important, if you're social workers or working in non-health environments, there's a real focus on making sure that you have access to the funding that previously those of us in the health professions have benefited from more so. So look at the PhD application, and on that application there'll be there'll be bits of the application that say, what public and patient involvement have you done? How do you know that this question is an important question for the population you're serving? There's a whole series of questions in that application form. And then you almost have to look at the application form and go, okay, so what do I already have? You know, have I got a good worked out question? Have I spoken to patients? Have I got all the necessary skills to do this PhD? And the bits in the pre-doc are, what are the bits that I can do this year that tick off some of the things on that application form? So I'm filling that gap. Either it could be a publication, it could be finishing off a systematic review to show that there's really strong evidence that this is a research gap. It could be increasing your academic networks and strengthening your supervisory team. So you may have one primary supervisor, but they may be within your professional group, and that this is a multidisciplinary problem. So you might want to think about increasing your supervisory team. Has that answered your question, Andy, about what the blocks are?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my hand's burning now from all the writing, so I'm glad this is being recorded. No, yeah, that makes perfect sense now. It kind of gives me a bit more clarity about what the next processes are. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one trying to keep things bounded when you've got just so many ideas in your head and there's so much that you want to do, because there are so many questions in this area that we just don't know the answer to. And you being the closest to that in your practice will know what the problems are, and base your application on big 2 or 3 key questions, and then really focus on, right, to be able to do a PhD in this area, like Michelle says, what don't I know already? What will help me develop a better application for a PhD? So there's one question before that I've put an answer to in the chat, but just for the sake of the recording, this year's fellowships will start in September 2022. Yeah, Victoria's just mentioned this, and again, it's probably in terms of, there are so many research questions and ideas, and choosing which the right one is, it's really probably seeking out the opinions of your colleagues who you trust, bouncing in back and forth between you and your potential supervisor to get the research questions tight. And
yeah, I would add, Ross, to that. You're absolutely right that there isn't a right one. There's the one that's likely to be the most successful is the one that you can defend the best. So, and when I say defend it, that you can make a really clear case that it's a gap. So you've got evidence from systematic reviews or clinical audits or data that shows that it's definitely not only a problem that you struggle with, but that it's an acknowledged gap in the research. And that it's not, because very often sometimes there are lots of questions, but there's been lots and lots of research already done in that area, and the issue is that we've just not implemented that research. It's not a research question, so it's making sure that what you've got is a research question, and then you're able to defend that you're absolutely the right person to answer that question. So if it's a pharmacy question around prescribing, I am not the right person to do a PhD into pharmacy practice and prescribing, because I'm not a pharmacist. So you'd have to make a really good case for me to be doing a pharmacy related PhD. Now, if it was about pain and pain research, then I might be able to make a good case, but it's not about the right question, but finding the question that best fits your expertise and the area of practice you're working in, the service you're in, and how you defend that question. And I noticed, Kirsty, your comment, I think that's what the internship helps you to do. Yeah, I think it's absolutely right to have those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's conversations. If you can speak with your, an academic in that field and just try and articulate your ideas, then that process of going through it really helps you think over it, and they can ask you questions and probe. And if you can try and get those conversations with as many people as who listen to you, you become better at defending it, and that comes through in your writing.
So I just wanted to mention one thing that was sort of we spoke about earlier in terms of people getting support from their organisations and their line managers and service managers. There are certain things that we do ask you to get signed off in your application. We're releasing the guidance in the application form this week, so we'll let you all, if you've let us know your contact details, we'll proactively send that out to you so that you've got it. But one thing that I would suggest is that if you do engage with your line manager and your service manager, saying this is something that you're thinking of doing, and you can show them the guidance that we will send you. But if they've got any questions and they want to come to us direct to find out more, then that's absolutely fine. We've all our contact details will be in the guidance, and we do need to make those sort of relationships with people so that people recognise that the fellowships are something that are, you know, hopefully happening every year. As long as the ARC is sort of funded, that we can build those relationships with the organisations and encourage people to apply.
That is a really good point, Ross. And the other thing that I would say is that this year we only did one question and answer session last year to launch the applications, which is what we're doing today, is that the applications, it's to mark they are now open. Let's have some initial questions. But we've put another one in, which I'd strongly encourage your line managers to come along to. So and see this as a partnership for putting the application in. So this is not just open to applicants, it's open to supervisors, it's open to line managers who want to ask very specific questions about funding and support. So it's an open platform. And the other thing I would say is that this recording, please do share with your line managers as an introduction to the pre-doctoral fellowships.
Brilliant. So unless anybody's got any last minute questions, I noticed that it's coming up to the hour, so I know that people are having to drop off now. But if anybody's got any queries that they want to take offline, they're welcome to contact us.
Can I quickly ask you something? I'm sorry, the last minute question, because you said for the learning we can have some money for the some courses, so I have done a couple of modules already from the research modules, but I need to do some leadership module and change in practice. Can I use that for that?
I think it would probably, if you detail those kind of things in your application, and if you're able to specify a course that you're looking at, these are research pre-doctoral fellowships. So if that leadership course or that management course helps you to, for example, undertake some training with people to educate them about research, or whether it's about if it's got a link to research, then it's likely that it will be eligible. Without knowing the sort of specific course, it's difficult to say. But if you document in your application what you'd like to do, it is good to have that sort of training plan. And as long as there's a rationale and it fits within the budget, I think that would be fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
Brilliant. So I think it's now 1 minute past, so we'll let people go. But if anybody's got any questions, like I said before, please do get in touch with us, and we'll make sure that people get access to all the material.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming along. Thank